Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the No Silicast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, January 19th, 2025, and this is show number 1028. Buckle up, everyone. This is going to be a mammoth show, so you might want to kind of pace yourself. We have 4 CES interviews and 1 full-length review by me of one of the products you're going to hear about in one of the interviews. It's also Security Bits Week, and that segment is nice and meaty, too. In Programming by Stealth this week, as promised, Bart and I are back with part 2 of his PowerShell teaser. We pick up where we left off, starting with learning about parameter definitions and the advantages that such a structured language affords us, including automatically generated help files and error checking. Bart updated the show notes to include valuable resource links to take your PowerShell to a higher level. Then we walk through our plan for 2025, where Bart is going to teach us about GitHub Pages, which power the Programming by Stealth show notes, by the way, and then how to change the style you see with Bootstrap to make it your own. After that, we expect to get back to PowerShell. You know, that's a ways down the road, so you never know. Things could change. Well, I got to be on Clockwise again this week, this time sharing the guest chair with Brian Guffey, along with hosts Micah Sargent, Dan Morin. As you probably remember, it's 4 topics, 4 guests. Dan asked us whether we use CarPlay. My answer became the title of the episode, Neither, but Sorta. You'll have to listen to understand why that's funny. I asked for examples of unusual uses of AI they might have seen because I had 2 crazy cool ones that I wanted to talk about. Then we discussed Sonos' struggles, including how they dropped the ball on accessibility. Finally, we talked about the probable demise of TikTok. Depending on when you're hearing this, it might be on, it might be off, who knows? Even though that last topic was sad for me, overall it was a rollicking good time as always. You can find episode number 588 of the Clockwise podcast in your podcatcher of choice, or you can follow the link in the show notes. There's a large group of people gathered around a dyslexic screen, and I'm here with Bertrand Discourse from the Dyslexic screen, and I'm just curious, what is this?
It's a specific screen that is being developed to help people with dyslexia. I don't know if you have the figure in mind, but dyslexia represents nearly 10% of the population in the world. And so people with dyslexia have this reading difficulty, and they use usually monitors and computers, and so here it's the first screen that uses a specific technology to help them.
All right, well, I'm definitely familiar with it. I did not know the statistic was that high. So how does this work?
So we know that people with dyslexia have usually visual stress and visual difficulties, and so this produces a strobing effect, a flickering effect. Can be a bit disturbing for some people, but for dyslexic people, they will adjust it to the good position, and the frequency they will find will be the comfortable point for them.
So you're purposely making it flicker, but flicker at a frequency for the individual.
Yes. We have changed the hardware of the product. It's not the software, it's really the hardware of the screen that has been changed. And so we manage the frequency of the backlight of the screen to really manage to find the comfort of reading for people with dyslexia.
Now I noticed you've got a small remote control. You said you're using this just for the show?
Yeah.
But how would, so he's got a little dial in his hand. Yep. How would you normally control the flickering if you were the user?
So if you have this screen at home or at your office, you will have to launch a file, and so it will...
Like a driver?
A driver, yes, particular driver, and it will help setting with your mouse the frequency. So you will see the screen, and just with your hand, just as I do it for the show here with the remote controller, you will adapt it and just tell you, wow, here, it's working now.
That's fascinating. So is it cross-platform for Linux, Windows, and Mac?
Sorry?
A cross-platform works on Linux, Windows, and the Mac?
Yes. All the platforms are working on it. Yeah.
Okay, since it's all in the hardware, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you show us it flickering? What this looks like? It's probably
yes, of course.
Not going to help me, but
so you have it here. I have put on the screen and the monitor the lowest possible frequency. It's 60 Hertz, so it's visible. And for many people can be a bit disturbing, and even for dyslexic people. So the goal will be to improve the frequency with the mouse, and then find the good position. Yeah.
Now, what's the science behind why that's helping people?
We have worked with 2 scientists in France, and they have found a new cause of dyslexia, and this cause is the non-dominance of your eyes. So when you are dyslexic, your both eyes are seeing at the same speed. So the speed of your eyes is absolutely the same. So the visual perception is troubled because 2 messages are arriving at the same time.
So you're supposed to be slightly off between your 2 eyes, or supposed to be. Typical would be the 2 signals are coming separate.
Readers have a quicker eye. It's a question of 2 milliseconds. It's very quick.
One eye is quicker than the other.
Yes.
But if you're dyslexic, if you're atypical in that, you would have them at the same time.
That's it.
Oh,
and
wow.
this flickering effect is recreating for the brain the
delay.
This delay. Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely, you know the strobing in the discos. You see, it's giving a view that you have the impression it's sequencing the things. That's the way it's working for your brain here.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So when will this be available?
It's in the first semester of the year of 2025.
Okay. What's the name of the company?
Lili for life.
And can you spell that?
L-I for life. So the light for life.
I got it.
The 2 lie.
Do you have a price point on it yet? A price?
A price. It's not launched for the moment. It will be, I think, 2 times the price of a normal screen.
Okay. That's still not bad because screens aren't that expensive anymore.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. Thank you very much, Bertrand. This is fascinating.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
But wait, there's a little bit more. I noticed a lamp on the table, and I made Bertrand come back up and show us. This is the Lili lamp, correct?
Yes, it's the first product we have developed with the Lili technology. It uses the same flickering effect, but this time on a lamp, an LED lamp.
So this would be reflective instead of emissive out of the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? You're right. Absolutely, Alison. And it works with the smartphone this time. So you use it by setting the good frequency on the smartphone, and then just as for the screen, you set the good one.
So he's dragging a couple of dials around to change the frequency. And this is already available, you said?
Yes, it's available. We have a website, yes.
And how much is the Lili for life? And how much is the Lili lamp?
It's 300.
Okay.
300, yeah.
Very cool. All right, I'm glad we snuck that in.
Thank you.
After I got done talking to Bertrand, I ran over and grabbed Rob Dunwood, who works for the Daily Tech News Show and was there representing them that week, and dragged him over because he has dyslexia. And I'm not sure this works for everybody, but he said that it was really, really cool. It wasn't, I'm not sure he was as impressed with the screen itself, but that lamp that we talked about at the very end, that's actually been around for a while, he said that made a really big difference for him. And he has a terrible time reading books. So he was pretty excited about it. Again, I don't know whether this would work for everyone, but it's sure worth a try. Apparently, I've been asleep for the last 10 years because I just learned about the Flic button from Laura from the company Flic, F-L-I-C, and they have a much more advanced different options available today, but we're going to start at the beginning because I didn't know about it, and she's going to explain how Flic works, and then we're going to learn about the new things announced and that are here at CES today. Thank you for listening to us,
Thank you. So I'm going to explain the first product that we launched 10 years ago, which is the Flic button. It's basically a wireless small button that you can connect your smart home devices with, and instead of having to go through the different devices or apps, you can just control all of them through a single physical controller.
So this button is maybe the size of a quarter and maybe 3/8 of an inch thick. You can stick it on a wall. You can carry it in your pocket.
You can have it in your nighttime table, like whatever you want, whatever, like it's simple and convenient for you.
Okay, so the original Flic has push, double push, and hold.
Yeah.
Nice and simple.
Exactly.
And you can assign actions to what that's going to do to maybe scenes or different devices.
Exactly. For example, if you want to automate like your morning routine, where you typically use lights, blinds, and a speaker. So instead of going through the different devices, you set them up in the Flic app, which takes up like 1 or 2 minutes, and then you're set to go and just push, and all these devices will be activated at the same time.
Okay, so at this point it looks like magic because it's just a button stuck on the wall. How is this connected to my network to be able to talk to my devices?
We have two options. It's through the phone that uses Bluetooth or through the hub. We typically recommend that because you don't need the phone to be there all the time. Let's say you have a big house or different family members. Those ones also need to be able to use a button. So that's why.
And the hub uses Wi-Fi then?
Yes.
So this has Wi-Fi in it?
No, the hub is the one that uses Wi-Fi, and then the button is connected through Bluetooth.
So the Flic button connects through Bluetooth
to the hub, and the Wi-Fi, and the hub has Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay. I see
Yes.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I follow that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you showed us in the app a second ago. Maybe we could do that one more time. So she's going to open up the Flic app on her phone, and she's got a Flic in her pocket.
Yes.
And you said you start by adding Flic to the phone.
And you have
Imagine
this
we've
one.
already just run the setup. Okay, so she tapped on the Flic.
And then you see the three triggers that we just said.
So it's got push, double push, and hold. What would we like to do with it?
Yeah. And you would add the trigger. Then,
And now
for
what we're seeing is a
example,
list of all the
integrations.
Yeah, so Philips Hue,
Yeah, let's just say
LifeX.
now we have here a Philips Hue light bulb. So I would add Philips Hue.
And that list came from the apps it found on your phone?
Actually, yeah, exactly. And then you would select the light that you want. Let's say this one.
You could pick a bunch of them too, I
Yeah,
imagine. Okay.
we have a bunch here. And then whatever you want the button to do. So let's say toggle on, toggle off.
So it's toggle on,
Yeah.
off, and other. So
And
you can
other.
start- and
And
it
then-
looks like you could do, if there's color options
Different
within that app.
colors, current, and then you just add it.
Okay.
And that's it.
And now when you tap that button, it would just turn the light on and
yeah,
off.
and then
Okay.
you do that with all the devices that you want to control, basically.
So this probably helps people who are in your home maybe that don't know anything about your smart home. They just want to push a button to make the lights come on.
Exactly.
Okay.
Simplifies.
All right. Now let's move down a little bit.
And
what do
then
we
the
have
one
next?
that we launched two days ago is the Flic Duo. It's basically an improved version of the Flic button. We've taken all the lessons that we gathered during these 10 years in the industry. It's a dual button, and you can use it simply mounted in a wall. But what's cool about it is that when you take it, since it has a motion sensor, you can control those devices, but through gestures.
So she just pulled it off the wall and it's magnetically attached to. Okay.
Through the metal plate, and then I would
So
show
it's still
you
got
a
push,
bit of the
double
demo.
push, and hold, but it can do other things?
Yeah, two new triggers: hold and twist, and hold and swipe. And you have
Okay.
a lot of commands within these ones. I'm just going to show you one, for example. So it's hold and swipe, and it changes the color.
Okay. Oh, look at that. All
Yeah.
the lights just turned from green to red to
Yeah.
green.
This is just an example. You can do whatever you need.
Okay.
And then, for example, hold and twist, and you change the brightness of the light.
She's just rotating this in her hand and the lights are going up and down in brightness. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
A new feature that it also has is that it has an accelerometer, which means it has fall detection capabilities. So, for example, like I have it in my jacket. You can wear it with our accessories or have it in your pocket.
Is that a little magnetic?
Yeah, also magnetic.
Yeah,
It's a clip. And it will detect when you fall and send a message to your emergency contact with your location.
Wow.
So it's also a great personal alarm button.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, now we've got one more here, the Flic Twist.
Exactly. So this one we launched 2 years ago. It's even more advanced, and it's a dimmer basically, and you can customize your smart home experience even more.
So this is about a two and a half inch diameter puck on the wall. A lot bigger, but it looks like I want to rotate that.
Exactly. It's not just push and toggle on off, but control your brightness of the lights.
So she's running her finger around the outside, and a nice light is showing the dimming of it.
Yeah.
So you're dimming and undimming the
Yeah,
lights with that.
Basically. But that could be done with, the volume of a speaker, the level of your blinds, and many other use cases, like pretty much any smart home device. We are compatible with the major smart home platforms, so Apple HomeKit, Matter, Alexa, Nanoleaf, Philips Hue. We have plus 100 integrations.
Wow. So what we looked at was integrating directly, like just with Nanoleaf or just with
Philips Hue.
Philips. But you're saying these all integrate with HomeKit and Alexa and
Sonos.
Google? Oh, it's Sonos.
Not Google.
Okay.
Google still did not add support for smart buttons. So yeah.
Well, I don't actually care about them,
We're
so
in
that's
progress.
fine.
Just a little note. Flic Duo, the one that we're launching today, will be in pre-orders from the 28th of January.
Oh, very good. So what's the price point on these? On
Okay, so for this one,
the Flic Duo?
the Flic Duo, sorry, is 59. But if you get another pre-launch, you can get an early bird price, which is 49.
Oh, there you go.
That's a good
And
one.
how about the Flic Twist?
And then this one is $90. And then we have the Flic button, which is the simplest one. It's $30.
Very good. I think I want them all, Steve. This has been great. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Laura.
so
and
much.
people would go where to find out about this?
Flic.io, our website.
FLIC.io. After my interview with Laura, she gave me some products to test. As she explained, the original Flic button can be used just with the Android or iPhone app, but it would be a personal device that can't be used by others if you do it that way. If you get the hub, like the Hub LR, you can attach one or more Flics to your network or even add them to HomeKit. For the Flic Twist or the new Flic Duo, a hub is required. Laura gave me a Flic starter kit, which is 3 Flic buttons and a Hub LR. She also gave me a Flic Twist to test. Now, before I dig into the details, I want to let the voiceover users know that the app is not very accessible. I found a lot of unlabeled buttons and actions that simply could not be performed. I did write to Laura to let her know that they need to add a lot of loving care to make it accessible. Really wish I had better news on that front, but let's forge ahead. If you've had any experience at all with smart home devices, you know that they're a bit of a nightmare on the Fiddly scale. You may have to turn off your 5 gigahertz network so they can find the 2.4 gigahertz band. You might have to turn off your VPN, and for certain it will take you around 11 tries to get them connected. And don't even get me started on adding things to HomeKit. Well, I'm disappointed to tell you that adding the Flic buttons and the Flic Hub LR to my network was a flawless experience. When I do this kind of experiment, I always take screenshots along the way so I can pinpoint exactly where everything went horribly wrong in the process. But things literally never went wrong. The first step is to install the Flic software on your phone, again, iOS and Android. You then create an account and allow the Flic app to find Bluetooth devices. I was then invited to add it to a hub. The Flic Hub LR is smaller than a deck of cards, and it feels like an empty box. It's so light. It has a micro USB connector, which was a little bit annoying, but again, this is an older model. It has an Ethernet jack, an audio jack, and an IR sensor. I have to confess, I have no idea why it has an IR sensor or an audio jack. When I saw the Ethernet jack, I just assumed I'd have to plug it into the switch on my router, and the micro USB to USB-A cable, which is, again, annoyingly old school, was quite short, so I was going to have to dig out a longer cable. Luckily, this tiny little box that weighs nothing actually has a Wi-Fi radio in it too, so I never had to plug it into my router. Now imagine my delight when tapping the Add Hub button immediately found the hub over Bluetooth, and when selected, instantly showed me a list of available networks. Oddly, my main and guest networks were in the list 4 and 3 times respectively, but I just tapped on the first instance. It asked for my Wi-Fi password, and my Eero software instantly announced that a new device had joined the network. The Flic software immediately asked if I wanted to add a Flic button to the hub. Seriously, I've never had a home automation device added to my network more seamlessly. Okay, you think you're so good, Flic. How about adding the buttons to the hub? I tapped Add a Flic. It told me to hold the button down on the Flic, and in about 3 microseconds, the Flic app said, pairing complete. After that, it invited me to rename my Flic and invited me to add automations to 3 different ways to press the Flic. As Laura mentioned, there's push, double push, and hold. But above that was the tantalizing switch that said Add to HomeKit. Now we're talking. I'll get this thing to be fiddly. Well, I flipped the HomeKit switch, and it told me that a configuration was needed. It said, and I quote, "Before we can add this Flic to HomeKit, you need to pair the Flic hub with your home. We'll guide you through this process if you proceed. Please keep in mind that any action already configured to this particular Flic will be erased." Well, that's really good information. So if you want to use your device with HomeKit, do it before you waste time on other actions. We'll come back to those options in a moment. I agreed to the configuration setup for HomeKit, where it was disappointingly easy. It asked to access my Apple Home data, select a home, and then dang it if it didn't instantly recognize the hub as a bridge. Now, this is the step where HomeKit products always fail. You have to do them like 11 times, right? I simply tapped Add, selected a room, renamed it, and added it to my home. So disappointing. It was no challenge at all. Well, once you've added the hub to HomeKit, you set the actions taken by the buttons through HomeKit. I keep forgetting that and opening the Flic app and trying to change it there, but it keeps politely reminding me, remember, you put this in HomeKit. I set one of the Flic buttons to enable the scene I use to get my den ready for the live show. This scene does things like disable the landline in Steve's den so it doesn't ring, and it turns on my front and back lights. I have another scene that turns the landline back on and turns off the show lights. I'm sad to say that the Flic button didn't work at all to enable and disable my live show light setup. I pressed and double pressed that button over and over again, and yet nothing happened. Finally, I got some fiddly behavior. Till Steve came storming out of his den and said, "Are you turning my lights on and off?" Well, it turns out we both have scenes for the live show, and I had chosen his 2 scenes instead of mine. So I'm pressing this button on and off, and its lights are just flashing in his room. Oh well, so once I chose my scenes, the Flic worked properly. Now, on my Mac, I use Keyboard Maestro, and I have a macro that sets up all of my software for the live show. It puts my Mac in Do Not Disturb, it turns off Wi-Fi, it does a whole bunch of stuff in the operating system. I started thinking, what if I could turn that into a shortcut, add it to the HomeKit scene, and have it all happen at the press of that Flic button instead of 2 separate operations? I whipped open ChatGPT and I asked it to build a shortcut that triggers a Keyboard Maestro macro. In a flash, it explained that I could copy the UUID of the macro from Keyboard Maestro, and using the correct URL scheme, I could make it into a shortcut. That was super cool. Totally worked. Unfortunately, you can't add a shortcut to HomeKit, which is just silliness. ChatGPT explained to me that you can create a dummy switch and add a shortcut to it, and then add the dummy switch to HomeKit. I remember running into this when I created an automation to turn a bunch of stuff off in our house when we go on vacation. I think this adds one more bit of complexity to the situation, which might make this a really silly idea. You just know I'm still going to try to do it, right? Once I had the Flic Hub LR and the Flic button working so easily, I moved on to the Flic Twist. This is a round puck about the size of the palm of my hand at 2.5 inches in diameter. It's about 3/4 of an inch tall. It has a round button in the middle with a ring of segmented lights around it. The package includes 2 AA batteries to power the device. I didn't mention it earlier, but the regular Flic button uses the replaceable CR2032 battery that we all know and love. In the Flic app, the Twist shows up with 4 operations it'll recognize: twist, push and twist, push, and double push. I tapped on twist, and it took me to a page where I could choose a parameter to control. It supports light functions, including brightness, color, color temperature, and saturation, if your bulbs support any of these parameters. It can do things like change the volume on audio or set the level of your blinds. There's an advanced section for advanced dimming and even a scene blender. That sounded fun, but I started playing that section and it was way above my pay grade to understand all those things it was trying to do. I told it to change the color on my lights, and then it asked me which devices I wanted to control. I found Philips Hue was in the list of options. Once selected, it told me to go press the button on the Hue hub, and as soon as I did, it was ready for me to add some bulbs. I added one of my lamps, and sure enough, twisting the twist changed the color. And my bulbs don't seem to get that rich of a color change, so I set it to be a simple dimmer, and it actually works quite well. The dial lights up as you rotate, which is very satisfying. By the way, I've talked to a few people about the Flic devices and the hub, and their immediate thing is, I don't want another hub. And I get that. I understand how adding complexity, adding a hub seems annoying, but the Hue hub really sold me on the idea of hubs. Notice all I had to do was press that one button, and now every light bulb all of my smart light bulbs from Hue are all involved and can play with the Flic Twist now. I would have had to do every one of them individually if it wasn't working on a hub. So, and it sure is making things easier with the Flic, so I'm not really against having all those hubs. Now, if we get back to the fact that I'm using this really advanced device as a dimmer, I think the Flic people are going to lose their ever-loving minds because it can do so much more. In the Actions menu, you'll find, I saw 30 or 40 integrations from Nanoleaf to SmartThings to Sonos to Spotify and more. I know she said 100, so I might not be seeing the full list depending on what you're asking for. Anyway, if you add that to the 4 independent actions you can apply with the twist, and it's a home automation user's dream. Now, one more thing on the twist, it has magnets on it, so it might be fun to hang it on a refrigerator or something else in the garage. The Flic buttons have an adhesive on the back to hold them in place. They're very satisfying to press in my hand, though, so I'm not sure I'm going to do that. On the other hand, I could stick one of them to the underside of my desk so I could turn on the live show lights like a bank teller alerting the authorities to a bank robbery in progress. Now, the only time I experienced any fiddliness at all was on a few occasions the app would fail to connect to the hub to do some configuration. I never found a reason why it was doing that, but most of the time it was as annoyingly responsive as everything else I've described. The only other thing I'd suggest for Flic is some way to identify which Flic is which. The first thing I did was cut a tiny part of a sticky note and stick it to the bottom and numbered them, and that way I could keep track of which one was which. I'm going to have to work on my imagination to give the Flic product some heavy lifting to do, but until I do, I'll be happy turning my live show setup on and off and dimming my lights. The Flic Hub LR with the 3 Flic buttons in the starter pack will run you $169. If you don't need Ethernet, you can get the starter kit with the new Flic Hub Mini, which uses USB-C, by the way, and it's only $99 with the 3 buttons. The Flic Twist by itself is $80, and you can buy it in combination with other devices. Their shop page gives you every combination you might be interested in. I'll say it one more time. These are the least fiddly home automation devices I've ever used, and I've used most of them. If you're interested in these products, you can go to flic.io. Now, Steve's listening in the live show, and he just pointed out to me that maybe I'm wrong when I say everything is fiddly. So I just walked up to Zenora Andrade of 10 Minds and told her sleep tracking is stupid and that her job is going to be to convince me that whatever they're doing here about sleep is not stupid.
No, not at all. Let me prove to you why, okay? So this here is going to be the AI Mopil. This is going to be a device that sits on your bedside. This here is going to have an AI microphone that picks up snoring frequencies and it learns your specific snoring frequency. Once it hears that you started snoring, that's actually going to activate this pillow here. There's nothing electronic inside the pillow. It's all in this component. What that does is that sees where your head is positioned, and then it's going to elevate 1 of 5 panels. What that does is elevate your neck, get those breathing passages and nasal airways open, and get your snoring to stop. Once it hears that your snoring has stopped, then it slowly decompresses. Now, that data is also paired with the app, and that's pretty much going to give you a sleep score throughout the night, or tell you what position you were in, you were snoring for how long, how deep of a sleep you were able to actually achieve, and then also let you adjust different things because it pairs with items such as the Oura Ring to give you a little bit more data. Like maybe it was a day you worked out super hard, now you're sleeping a little bit heavier, that's what caused you to snore. Just to kind of pinpoint what it is that's causing you to snore and how to prevent that in the future.
Yeah, so that's the thing I always get back to is if you can't figure out the root cause of something, then the reason I say sleep tracking is stupid is it's like weighing yourself every day.
It's true.
You don't lose weight because you weigh yourself. You have to count the input.
You got to figure out why. So this is at least just trying to gather as much data as possible so you could possibly pinpoint out what it is exactly, and maybe even take that to a health professional as well to show them, hey, this is the data I have. Why am I snoring when maybe this is the temperature of my room versus not, and then do further tests that can probably help. So it's checking temperature as well? Yes. Okay. It pairs with breathing patterns, everything now, since it's compared with other devices like the Oura Ring. So if you're snoring, are you by definition not sleeping well? You aren't, because your brain is getting less oxygen to it due to that interrupted breathing. Okay, I like the idea of something doing the change that I don't maybe have to watch all these different metrics. Exactly. It really will work on its own. The device is honestly just for extra data, just so you can see as to maybe why certain information is causing you to be that way. Well, I don't think this is stupid. I'm glad. See, I told you I could prove it. All right, so the company is 10 Minds. Yes. Where would we go to find? We're based out of South Korea, so we're still looking to launch this version of the product, but previous versions without pretty much so much depth, like pairing with the Oura Ring, is available right now. We sell it at the show for $349. Okay, that's without these other features. It does pair with the app right now currently. It's just not as in-depth and connects with too much like smart home and Oura Ring, but it does give you data through the app right now, currently the market. It does tilt your head to make you stop snoring. Yes, I want the thing that actually fixes it. It does. It tilts you, it gets you going, gets you breathing properly, and then it slowly relaxes you down. Yep. Okay, very good. All night. Where would they find the 10 Minds? 10 Minds, we're based out of South Korea, so we really just have it on 10minds.com right now. All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you.
We're walking down the show floor here, and a woman is running around throwing pieces of floor down on the ground and invited me to kneel on it. And I had to go over and talk to Doug McNeil and find out, what are we looking at here, Doug?
Well, behind me is Hiroshi, and he used to work for Yamaha Motocross Racing, and he developed a special polymer that absorbs the shock in the motorcycle. Then he decided to take the same technology and put it underneath laminate and carpeted flooring. And he's installed that in over 600 hospitals throughout Japan, each hospital reporting an average of about 5 falls per year, which resulted in a break of a hip or a leg. And now they're all reporting 0 incidences of broken hips and legs.
That was over what time period? 5 to 6?
Within a year.
What I mean, 5 to 6 per day, per year, per week?
5 falls per year, which result in the break of a hip or a leg.
Okay.
And then it's the back end of it.
So he's picked up a piece of laminate that's got these black X's.
These square polymers support your weight. Collectively, they support your weight, but upon impact, it's going to collapse. So when you're walking on it, you feel like you're walking on a normal floor. You can't feel much difference at all. But if you were to fall on that floor, you definitely would feel that difference, and you're not going to break your hip or leg. I can take a clay pot and drop it on a normal floor. It's going to break into 100 pieces. I can take that same pot, drop it on this floor. It's going to bounce right off.
Wow. And I would think that would be better for fatigue, too, standing. I mean, they make mats like that in front of the dishwasher.
Well, for a trade show, it's perfect.
Yeah, I'm just going to stand here the whole time.
That's right. So you can do a partial floor, or you can do an entire floor. You can do an entire wing of a hospital, or whatever you want to do.
Did you picture this in homes, too?
In homes, too. Yeah, absolutely. There's a program for that.
Maybe retirement facilities. I don't know. I fall down a lot. I'm thinking I'd be pretty good with this.
Yes, absolutely.
So if people wanted to learn more about, what did you say it is called?
Magic Shields.
Shinobi.
Or Shinobi Flooring. I think we're rebranding our name right now. So
we're mid-cycle. So Shinobi Floors, where would they go to find this?
Well, magicshields.co.jp.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
This week, I got an interesting email from a lovely gentleman named John Denning. He was writing to tell me that he was having trouble with the donate option for the podcast, the one that lets you use a credit card or Apple Pay. To show me where the problem was, he included a video screen recording from his phone, and it showed me where the Buy Me a Coffee website wasn't as easy to read with voiceover as it should have been. One of the interesting problems was that instead of saying, how many coffees do you want to buy, it said, hot beverage, and then multipliers. Well, if you know that the emoji for hot beverage looks like a coffee cup, maybe he would have had a chance. There were a few other places the interface could be improved for accessibility, but John persevered and successfully made a nice donation. I especially liked what he wrote about the show. He said, "Love the podcast. It's great to hear people who appreciate research and facts versus just taking things on faith because they like the source. I also love the photos you share on Mastodon. I'm blind, but the descriptions you include enable me to enjoy them. Thank you." Well, I have to say, one of the things I love about Mastodon is that alt tags, these descriptions of the images, are expected. I've been getting more and more positive feedback on my descriptions from Mastodon than any other service, and it motivates me to do an even better job of describing my images. I even throw little jokes in sometimes for the blind. Well, all of this is a long-winded way to say that John is an awesome guy for writing such a nice note and for making a generous donation. You too can write me nice notes by going to podfeed.com/donate to show your support for the show. Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Doom and Gloom with Bart Bouchatz, otherwise known as Security Bits. Cut you off
After all these years, you still managed to catch me. Oh, well. I love it. Hello, everyone.
What horrors do you have for us?
It's a mixed bag. We have 2 deep dives because there isn't a huge amount of news, but there is a surprising amount of follow-up. It's like a lot of the show notes are up here at the top, where it's kind of stuff we talked about last time, and it wasn't done. It wasn't fully baked. So as we were recording last time, it had just happened that Apple had settled a lawsuit. I think it was a class action. I think it was in California, but it's definitely in the United States. And it was to do with the fact that Siri had a habit of falsely triggering. It would hear you say, "Hey, yes, lady," when you absolutely hadn't. And they were simultaneously paying outside contractors to randomly view an average sample of like 0.0001% of recordings to see if Siri was being silly, which it was. And they hadn't been clear enough. It was in the fine print, but it was very, very, very fine print. And so that's technically a data breach. And so they couldn't fight the lawsuit on the basis that the fact said they had done something wrong. So they settled it, but the lawsuit contained some ridiculous claims. Like, I said these words near my iPhone, and then next week I had this thing advertised at me, which is absolutely, like, that's not what was going on. But anyway, they settled the case. And so all of the news outlets who like sensationalism picked and chose those parts of the lawsuit and said that Apple settled, therefore this must be true. And social media went nuts. You know how this goes, right? So the day after we recorded, Apple thought we should nip this in the bud. So they did one of their posts on their website laying out in very plain facts, we do not do any of this stuff with Siri. We never have, we never will. It just says what we already knew. But they say it really clearly, very emphatically. So if you have friends and family who may have got caught up in all of this, send them that link, might help. And on a related note, there's another meme that started doing the rounds around about the same time, and I'm not sure it's unrelated, where some people on social media were saying that the setting "learn from this app" is how Apple secretly spy on people. It's just all horse poop, right? There's no fact here, right? But if you see this doing the rounds, or if friends or family ask you, "Is Siri spying on me?" No.
So. Okay, good. So like we always thought.
Just like we always thought. Yeah.
But they did do what was technically a data breach. I know people were up in arms at, what was it? It was like $95 million or something. It was some pittance amount of money to Apple that they settled for, but they were settling for that very narrow thing that they caused, not this hyperbolic description people gave it.
Exactly. So the punishment should fit the crime. It was a silly whoopsie on their part. It really wasn't the end of the world at all. And the fine was 95 million, which is not nothing. But it's Apple. It was 1 second
it's
profit
nothing
or
to
whatever.
Apple.
Yeah,
right.
The other long-running recent story is the hacks of Western telecommunications company by an attack group we are almost certain belongs to the Chinese government. They've been codenamed Salt Typhoon. And when last we left our story, 2 US carriers had cleaned their network and announced themselves all fixed. And then about 2 or 3 days after we reported that, there was like some sort of conservation of attack surface or something. But 2 extra US carriers ended up on the list of people who, oops, we were compromised. We found the hackers. Look at us. So that was Charter and Windstream. I've heard of Charter, but I don't think they're that big. And I've never even heard of Windstream.
Yeah, Charter's an ISP, like Comcast.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so telecommunications.
But I thought this was
ISPs.
telecoms. Oh, I think of Verizon and AT&T when I think of telco.
They may sell services to businesses and stuff. Like if you sell businesses VoIP stuff with a bridge, like if you're selling it with a bridge into a phone number, then you are actually worth hacking by someone trying to spy on phone numbers.
Okay.
So, yeah, that line gets very blurry. Anyway, that's not so good. The Federal Communications Commission, on the other hand, have responded with a bunch of new thou must rules for telecommunications companies in the United States. None of it is earth-shattering to me. It's like you should do the basic security you should have always done. Okay, well, here it is in writing. Thank you.
Okay.
It's a response. It's probably important. It frees up resources
in the barn door after the horse is gone?
Yes, but nonetheless, it should be closed. There are more horses. Okay. And right, it's important.
Right.
And the other thing is, within a corporate environment, if you're mandated by government, it's much easier to get the person time to allocate to the problem. It's like, well, we have to do this. No argument here, right? Assign your team to do that. So it's probably wise for the FCC to do this. A few months ago, because it was the week before the Olympics, and the Olympics were in the summer, so it must be at least half a year ago, the French government did something that we took note of on this show, because it's quite unusual for governments to proactively, effectively hack back. So a French security company discovered Chinese state actors had successfully hacked a bunch of IP addresses in France. And they sort of assumed that on the eve of the Olympics, they might detonate some little booby traps and cause trouble in the country. And they weren't entirely wrong, because there were major outages of stuff just before the Olympics. And it was people trying to sabotage the event and steal their thunder. But they got a court order allowing them, the government, to hack the hacked devices and clean them up. Which is like, okay, that's assertive. It was legal and stuff, but it's noteworthy. Well, that has now happened in the United States, again, with court supervision. So we now have unsealed court documents after the fact. So they went to a judge in Pennsylvania, got permission, and then the FBI reached in, cleaned up the infected IP addresses because they were afraid they could be used to cause outages in infrastructure. And now the ISPs have been told which IPs were cleaned. And since they know which customers match which IPs, the ISPs are reaching out to the people to say, by the way, the FBI cleaned up your machine.
Okay. Oh, now you just changed
Yes.
words. You've been saying that the IP address was infected, and I don't know how an IP address is infected. The machine was infected is what you meant.
From their point of view, all they see is the IP address the infected machine appears on the internet as. So the IP address might...
Yeah. But it's not the IP address. I mean, an IP address is just a number, right? It's a lookup. It's a
True.
Yeah. Okay. I was because my question, I was starting to raise my hand, was going to be, how do you infect an IP address? But yeah, the machines. So they're reaching into the machines at those IP addresses. The FBI is doing that. The FBI can reach in and touch my machine.
Yeah.
Do I like that?
It's grey because your machine is already hacked. Right, your machine is hacked. The only reason the FBI can reach in is because you have malware.
Oh, that's okay. That lightens it up a little bit.
Yeah,
to a light tinge of gray.
Yeah, as I say, it's noteworthy because this doesn't happen often, because it makes people's spidey sense go off and law enforcement are nervous, so they don't do it often, and so this is quite noteworthy. But again, it's Chinese state actors, and there's a lot of nervousness that there could be like a massive nationwide power cut or something when the Chinese go, tee hee hee, let's have some fun. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of focus on kicking Chinese state actors out of infrastructure. Rightly so. I think it's wise.
Right.
So that brings us to the first of our two deep dives, and I've done these in a deliberate order from ick to, oh, okay, that's nice. So the first of these is the horrible story. As with all of these deep dives, I'm going to give you a one-sentence summary, which I've popped at the top as a TLDR, too long didn't read. If you see an ad in an app, so this is only in apps, not in your browser, then it could have enabled your location to be tracked, and there's nothing you can do about it apart from not using apps that have ads. And the baddies here are not the app makers. The app makers have been compromised. The baddies are the advertising brokers. There are companies selling ads who are doing really unscrupulous stuff, and ironically, we discovered it because they're also bad at security, and they had a data breach, and they leaked the location data they stole. So this is just ick all the way down. The root of this problem is the way ads work on an app, right? So imagine you're writing an app. You've taken your time scroller and you've decided you want to monetize it, and it's hard work to find people to sponsor you and stuff. So you just sign up for an ad service. And what that does is it provides some slots in your app. And in real time, within milliseconds, every time a user opens that app, there's a little auction happens in the background for people selling ads and people buying ads. And they auction off this space that says, there's a slot available. There's an eyeball. Who wants this eyeball? And they give away some metadata to say, yeah, right, because these ad companies are tracking everyone. So they give away whatever metadata they can in the auction. So I'm auctioning off an eyeball that belongs to a 40-something-year-old guy in Ireland who we think is interested in tech if I open your app, right? Mm-hmm. But your phone, or my phone in this example, has made a connection to the auction server, so my IP address is in there as well. And some unscrupulous ad companies realize that they don't even have to win the auction. They just join the auction, scrape all the data in the auction, and profile people, and track their location by their IP address, and then sell it.
Oh, geez. So every app that has ads, well, no, not every app that has ads.
Every app that has ads that they haven't
his
done.
Ads.
Yes. Precisely.
But
that's
you don't
the
really
difference.
know which ones those are, right? I only know that because Marco said so on ATP.
Yeah. And in this day and age, very few people do what Marco does and take the time to find effectively sponsors, right? If you're a hand choosing advertisers, they're closer to sponsors than they are to the modern style of ad, which is auctioned in real time. And this means that the app developers are not choosing this. They're not guilty here. They haven't injected some sort of tracking code. And it also means that the apps being caught up in this tracking are big. Candy Crush, Temple Run, MyFitnessPal, My Period Calendar and Tracker, Tinder, Tumblr, Office 365, Yahoo Email, Flight Radar 24, a whole bunch of apps for prayer books for Muslim and Christian prayer, a whole bunch of VPN apps. They were all found in the data breach.
Almost all of these I could picture why. How would Office 365 be doing ads other than for themselves?
There are free read-only versions of Office 365 apps that are monetized by ads. So none of the corporate stuff
Seriously?
is monetized by ads.
Oh, that's creepy.
It is possible for someone who's an individual and not doing anything on behalf of any organization to get Office apps for free, and in exchange they see ads.
Yeah, I just don't expect it at Microsoft.
But again, they haven't done anything wrong here,
more.
right?
Well, no, I don't expect a company like Microsoft to be using an ad network to do ads on their free apps. It just seems beneath them to me.
Remember, they did briefly add ads into the start menu on the free version of Windows 11 for home
there
users.
You go.
Right, their corporate customers pay Microsoft money, so Microsoft are really good about not putting any ads anywhere near those corporate customers, right? They pay with cash.
Right.
But if you're getting something for free, they're not a charity. You know, you're being monetized.
They do make money other ways, but I don't know. Apple's in the ad business too. So what am I complaining about?
So the obvious question is, well, how do we defend ourselves? And the first thing I'll say is just to underline, this is specific to ads in apps, the problem here. So on your web browser, your browser is sanitizing all of the data that is flowing from the web page to the ad network. Any blocking you have is working away fine. Any anonymization you're doing is working fine. So this really is, this particular new discovery is limited to ads in apps. So that's the scope of our discussion here. And ultimately, the problem is the back end is just utterly broken. This whole infrastructure for selling ads in real time is just open to abuse. And there's nothing we can do to protect ourselves apart from not seeing ads. So if there's an app that's only available for free with ads, maybe don't use that app. Maybe use an alternative app. Or if an app has two versions, a paid version and a not paid version, one of which doesn't have ads, give serious thought to paying for the paid version. You're paying anyway. The question is it with your privacy or with your money?
You know, the problem with that is the usual thing to do, even if you're the type of person to pay for apps, is to try it out first in the ad version, see whether it's something you need or want, and then switch over to the paid version. But now you've already given them your data to track you.
Well, in the Apple ecosystem, you have the other option. Most of these have a free trial. So I will generally just go straight to the free trial and then cancel it or not.
There are businesses that have that. Definitely not all.
Right. There is no one answer to fit everything. It's a case of minimize. And the other thing is, if you only use one app with ads, it doesn't give that granular of a data stream for tracking you, because it's just the odd data point, and they may not be able to join the dots. If you give out little enough information, they can't join the dots, because they're never explicitly told this is Alison. They just infer that based on having enough information to connect the pieces. The other interesting thing to note is that Apple users are less vulnerable to this than Android users, because if you use app tracking transparency to say apps cannot track, the OS is filtering the metadata in the auction so that the app has no choice to send information the OS never gave it. So while there is still enough to give broad tracking, because your IP address gives you not the opposite of granular, vague location data, it doesn't give you high grain location data like you could end up in Android, where you don't have these OS level blocks filtering what's being sent to the ad networks. So it's still not good for iOS users, but it could be worse. You could be an Android.
Okay.
So that's something. And that's kind of all I can say, unfortunately, which is why this is just an icky story. You just want to minimize the ads you see on your phone, because the whole infrastructure for auctioning those ads is rotten to the core.
So this has always been true, but we just now know?
It's one of those things where app tracking transparency has forced the industry to be more creative, to ignore our explicit request not to be tracked. They feel they have an entitlement to track us regardless of how clearly we express our beliefs. And they're just getting more and more creative about how they defy us and spy on us. I just find the whole thing repugnant. It's gross.
And the data breach to start with is what exposed it. Let us know.
Yeah.
Well, we promised you doom and gloom. That's a good one. What
I
else you got?
delivered, huh? So the next story is not, it starts as not good news, but it ends with a nice new feature on Have I Been Pwned. So basically, Troy Hunt has made the service even better, and we already love it, and we already think it's great, and now it's even better. So what happened this week, on the 13th, that's this week, is that a massive database of 71 million username and password pairs were added to Have I Been Pwned. And the source for these 71 million credentials wasn't a leak on a website. It was so-called stealer malware. And this is becoming a thing now, where the attackers are using malware to gather credentials and then sell those credentials as if they were a data breach. So it's the same marketplace for selling the stolen credentials, but instead of stealing the credentials straight from LinkedIn or straight from whatever company, you steal the credentials from lots and lots of different people's computers, gather it all together, and then sell it as a bundle.
Okay.
Now, this is a problem for Have I Been Pwned, because Troy Hunt designed the site in the days when the way your password leaked was that a website got hacked or did something silly and lost your data. So all of the logins in one of the 3 LinkedIn breaches is from LinkedIn. All of the logins from a breach at some other company is from that company. So Have I Been Pwned never had the ability to give you multiple websites to a single breach. That was not in their data model. It is now. So the API has been expanded, and the free check my email address features have been expanded. So now it will tell you your email address was caught up in this stealer log, and the websites that the stealer log saw you on were X, Y, and Z. So now you have actionable, useful information.
Because of this kind of breach, we know more?
Well, it's
That's
because
where that
this kind of
information
breach
comes
is now taking off that Have I Been Pwned has had these new features added. So before now, there have been stealer logs gone to Have I Been Pwned, and Troy was very cranky because all he could say was, attackers stole your username and password to a website you use. What do you do with that? I'm compromised somewhere. Well, I could have told you that. You're alive on planet Earth. That happened.
Right.
So now Have I Been Pwned can give you actionable information. You're caught up in a piece of malware and they got your Google account and your Facebook account and your whatever. So it's now specific, actionable information. You can do something with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Remember I've complained to you about that it's kind of like, well, what do I do with that information?
Right. Yeah, because the other one that was similar was there was a giant big list of hacked accounts leaked on Telegram. It was on Telegram, it wasn't Telegram accounts. It was data that leaked on a Telegram channel. And the only information you could get was, yeah, your email address was caught up in that. And exactly like you say, you're going, okay, now what?
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So now we have a what. And so free users can do the existing search. You have to prove you own an email address to get the report on that email address. So you can sign up to be proactively told your address is in a new breach. There's a button on the Have I Been Pwned website to do that. The Notify Me button. Or at any time, you can go to Have I Been Pwned and there's a giant big box at the top of the screen. You pop your email address in there. You hit the button. And it will send you an email saying, prove you own this email by entering this code. And if you can prove you own the email address, you'll get the full list of all of the breaches that your email address is involved in. And now, if you're in one of these stealer logs, it'll tell you which website they stole.
I wonder whether we get that information inside 1Password without having to go out and do that.
Hypothetically, we could, because the second piece of information is that for organizations, the API has new endpoints to expose this same functionality. So if you, as an organization, pay to access the Have I Been Pwned database, you can get that for the domains you have proven ownership of. I don't know how Watchtower works, because obviously Watchtower don't own every single domain, but they are partners with Have I Been Pwned, so maybe they get more access than others. That's an interesting question. I don't know the full details, but hypothetically, you would hope the answer is yes.
Yeah, they're really in a relationship. As soon as you put in your email address into Have I Been Pwned, it says, start using onepassword.com. There's a big blue button there to go grab it. I didn't have to prove I owned that email address, but maybe I did it a while ago and it's cached in some cookie somewhere.
I'm almost certain you have, Alison, because how else could you have told me the notifications are useless?
Oh, no. I know I've been in there before. I thought you were saying it was new that you had to prove that you owned the address.
No. It's new that when you follow the old process you've been following before, the information you get is richer.
Okay, got you. So Watchtower doesn't tell me anything about being pwned. The Have I Been Pwned stuff, it's not in there. Watchtower gives me the score, tells me where I've reused passwords, weak passwords, passkeys available I haven't done, two-factor authentication I could do.
Okay, what Watchtower does is it will tell you if a specific website you have an account on was caught in a data breach and if your password is older than the data breach.
So if I've already fixed the password, then these 36 sites that that Have I Been Pwned is talking about, I have changed my, like LinkedIn. In May 2016, LinkedIn had 164. I believe I probably fixed it back then.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
These are all really old.
Yeah, so 1Password knows the date you changed your password and it knows the date the data breach was. So Watchtower could be clever and tell you whether or not to worry your pretty little head.
Yeah, I haven't been breached since 2019.
Wow.
Ooh, look at me go, girl.
Go you.
Yeah, everything is 2019, 2018, further back. Well, no, LinkedIn got caught again in 2021.
Okay, well, that's still a while ago. We're now in 2025.
Oh, they look like they're in reverse order. Yeah, they're getting much newer. So Internet Archive, for example, is there in September 2024. That's why I thought I was better off. Oh, well.
Okay. As I say, it's a nice new feature. It's good to see Have I Been Pwned continue to evolve. So, yay.
Yeah, very good.
All right, so we get to jump to action alerts. We had a quiet time over the holidays, and it turns out that was because the people fixing things were on holidays, I guess, because January's Patch Tuesday was a doozy. 80 days patched, and a
by
total
Microsoft.
of... By Microsoft. This is the
Microsoft he's
Microsoft
talking
Patch
about.
Tuesday. Yeah.
We just need to be specific. Not
Yes.
everybody knows what Patch Tuesday is.
Indeed. So if you have a Microsoft product, patch. If you count flaws, it's 159. If you count fixes, it's 161. If you count 0 days, it's 8. Either way, I think you should fix that.
8 0 days.
Yeah.
That's a big number, right?
Yeah.
Usually we see
Yeah.
1 or 2.
Yes. Yeah, the norm is like 2 or 3 these days because it's getting worse all the time. And just in case you were humming and hawing, if I haven't scared you enough, one of those fixes is for a bug in UEFI, which is a replacement of BIOS. And that could allow someone to make a permanent bootkit on your machine, where basically every time you update the OS, the malware would get right back in because it's actually hiding in the firmware of your device. So that's a really important one to patch.
So I know we use UEFI on Macs. Is UEFI on Windows machines now too? Or is this affecting both OSs?
Well, okay, so this very specific bug only affects machines booting into Windows via UEFI, because basically there's a hook between Windows and UEFI, and the problem is how UEFI talks to Windows. But yes, they're now using UEFI on the PC side and have been for some time. So
Okay.
good old BIOS is finally dead.
I think I've asked you that before, but do you know of these Microsoft patches? Are these cross-platform patches, or are they all
They're
about
the usual
Windows?
mix. Well, no, they're the usual mix. So if you're running Office, you should patch your Office apps, because that is the baddies love Office because it's so popular, right? They love anything you can exploit by sending someone a Word doc or an Excel file. That's their favorite stuff. So you definitely do want to patch.
Yeah, just had it open yesterday, and other than it going, hey, guess what? We've put Copilot inside Microsoft Excel. There wasn't an update that I saw, so I think it's been auto-updating in the background probably.
It does that, yeah. Unless you go out of your way to stop it, keeping you secure, it's now secure by default, which is, I like that. Just don't expect regular folk to be thinking about this. Let them just do what they care about, write their letter, do their spreadsheet, do their accounts, whatever.
I did send off a letter to my in-laws. Steve's father is a big Excel fan, uses it 2 or 3 times a day. And I knew the likelihood that he would have a stroke when he saw, hey, we've put AI into Excel was high. So I hopefully caught him before. It appears to be pretty easy to just ignore it. It sits in the toolbar. And it's also real stupid.
Oh, is that a bug or a feature?
Well, I don't know. I selected a region of cells and I said, hey, give me a red border 3 points thick around this. And it answered analyzing for like, I don't know, 15 seconds. And then it said, I cannot analyze the data structure of these cells. Just told you to draw a line around them. But
is it only for data analysis? Is it supposed to be that you can say, tell me what this means, like pivot table on AI steroids?
Yeah, I have seen their little example showed 2 columns of data. One was like cost, and the other one was, or it was like revenue and cost of products. And it said, calculate the profit for me. And it made a new column that subtracted the 2 numbers. So I think it is made to do things like that more. But I thought it could probably draw a box. You know,
I guess they didn't focus on making it pretty. Excel generally doesn't focus on making it pretty. That's what numbers is for. It does very little else, but it's pretty.
90, yeah, right. But it's hard to make it pretty. It's hard to draw a box around a cell. I find that a very difficult thing to do in numbers. But most of the people I know use Excel to make tables. They want columns and rows, and that's all they're doing with it. Some people use it for the real stuff, but a lot of people.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not the subject of this.
Indeed. If you own a Samsung-made Android device, patch. So December 2024, there was a patch released. We now know what that patch did, because they gave people time to patch before letting the cat out of the bag. Basically, it was a really nasty 0 day found by Google's Project Zero. So Android people, patch. Mac users, you should double check that your Mac is fully patched, because in a very similar way, we now have responsible disclosure of something Apple patched in December, which allows bypassing of system integrity protection, or at least it allowed in the past tense. So patchy, patch if your Macs are behind. And that was Microsoft's team found that one and reported it to Apple responsibly. So lots of nice responsible disclosure going on here with different companies doing the right thing instead of scoring points. They're actually helping each other secure each other, which is what we want. This last one is unlikely to apply to most of our listeners, but if it does apply to any of our listeners, they need to really pay attention here. Quite rare for a protocol as old as ORSync, a really nasty bug has been found in ORSync. So if you have like an ORSync service enabled on your NAS or on a Linux VM you keep in the closet or something, patch it. Because remote people can run arbitrary code, which you don't want on something with all of your data on it.
Not as much as you would think. I tend away from that, actually.
Yeah.
You keep talking while I open my Synology and see what it's up to. If it's got an offer of a patch. Because I definitely use rsync to sync between my two Synologies.
Depending on how you use ORSync, you may or may not be running an ORSync server. You may be using the ORSync command, but over SFTP, in which case you're okay. But if you're running ORSync D, so the ORSync daemon, which you may or may not be because you've just installed something with a name in the GUI. So how that name in the GUI does it, you may or may not be able to tell. By the way, patch. If there's an update, yay. And if there isn't, don't worry.
Don't panic.
Yes. Worthy warnings then. A new tactic has appeared that is trying to bypass a really cool security feature I didn't know our iPhones had. So Apple make these little changes and I'd never even noticed. So if you get an SMS message from someone who's not in your contacts and who you've never replied to, links are disabled. Your iPhone will show you the link, but it's not clickable, which is a great way to stop phishing.
Yeah.
So now the phishing attacks have cottoned on. The phishing message now ends with reply capital Y to enable the link. But that's a good sign. That tells you to be suspicious. Why do you need me to enable a link? Why are you asking me this? Who are you? So, it's maybe worth mentioning it to friends or family to be suspicious of something, telling you to reply to enable links. That's not normal. But that is what they're doing to get around this nice security feature. If you live in the United States and you pay taxes, which means all of you adulty types in the United States, it is now the time of year where you should be getting your PIN from the IRS because baddies file first. They do not wait until the 1st of April deadline or whatever it is.
April 15th, yeah.
April 15th, yeah. They will do it ASAP. So get your stuff done so that you're the one filing your taxes, not the baddies.
Yeah, that's not possible, Bart. It's great advice, and it can't be done. Because if you try to do your taxes right now, there's a really good chance that whoever is supposed to send you the forms that tell you how much interest you earned, for example, on an account or capital gains or whatever, they won't have done it yet.
Well, you don't have to do your full taxes. What you need to do is apply for your PIN, because if you have your PIN won't be issued to a baddie. So it used to be that only people who the IRS thought might be attacked had the option to get a PIN on their account and protect themselves. But now that everyone in America has been in at least 10 data breaches, this feature is available universally to everyone. Everyone has the right to PIN to protect their identity on the IRS services. And so if you don't apply for the PIN, the baddies use social engineering to apply for your PIN on their behalf, and now they can prove their identity to the IRS. So this is a security feature, which is optional, and if you opt out, you're actually less secure.
I remember us talking about this last year, and I seem to remember there was a reason I still couldn't do it, but I'll try.
That's the best you can do. And I'll be honest, I don't understand the fine minutiae. I have trouble enough with the Irish tax system. I'm not doing yours too.
I can learn ours. I think I'll follow links on this website to go to do this.
Yeah. Now, if you're someone who drives in the United States, you might want to be aware of 2 data protection stories that broke this week. The first is a lawsuit filed by the Attorney General of Texas against Allstate, whom I understand are a rather large provider of services to drivers in America. I think they're an insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they apparently have been collecting, I'll just quote from the lawsuit, Allstate collected trillions of miles worth of location data from over 45 million consumers nationwide and used the data to create the world's largest driving behavior database. When a consumer requested a quote for a quote or renewed their coverage, Allstate and other insurers would use the consumer's data to justify increasing their car insurance premium. This is data they collected without consent, and they're using it to raise people's premiums if they don't like how you drive.
How did they get your location data, Bart?
I presume they had some sort of cooperation with the someone who makes cars or something. I actually don't know. I'm now starting to think this might be related to the GM story where OnStar was secretly collecting your data every 3 seconds and selling it.
I don't doubt this happened. I'm just real curious. So they unlawfully collected, used, and sold driving data. I like that they sold it to other companies too. But how did they do it? How did they know how you drove? That's a very different thing than even just location data, right? That says what speed
it's location
I was
plus
driving.
acceleration.
Yeah. Well, or did I go through a stop sign? I mean, that would have to be using cameras and radars, all kinds of.
I haven't heard anything. I heard extreme braking mentioned and extreme acceleration.
So that would have to be
speeding.
Data from the car. The
would.
car would have to be telling them that.
Which is why this OnStar story next may actually be related. So the Federal Trade Commission have ordered GM to stop collecting and selling driver data because OnStar, without consent, was gathering data in GM cars every 3 seconds and selling it to the insurance industry. So they may have been selling it to Allstate.
Yeah, it says the law. So I'm still reading the previous story's website. This lawsuit follows Attorney General Paxton's lawsuit against General Motors and ongoing investigations into several car manufacturers for secretly collecting and selling drivers' highly detailed driving data. So it also says our investigation revealed that Allstate and Arity, whoever that is, paid mobile apps millions of dollars to install Allstate's tracking software.
Oh, wow. So this ties right back to our bloody earlier story about mobile app data tracking as well.
Yeah. I still don't know how. I mean, I could see how, like, let's say I'm running. What's the Strava, the running app? You know, that's watching your location. We know that. Could it somehow get the acceleration data?
If you don't tell an app not to track, it absolutely can get at all sorts of information. And if you're on Android, you don't even have app tracking transparency. So a lot of stuff is actually being tracked on Android devices more than on iPhones.
Yeah, not that some people aren't still being tracked on iPhones, but
right.
Yeah, that's odd. I'm just curious how that worked. Anyway, ick.
It's not ick, precisely.
Good job, Bart.
I'm glad to see action, though, right? We have a lawsuit by an attorney general, and we have the Federal Trade Commission stepping in and putting the brakes on, you know, telling GM to stop it. So that's, I just noticed that. Yes. Okay, so notable news. We have you may or may not have heard that there's a critical vulnerability in a special USB-C driver that Apple invented, and it's in your iPhone, and it could be used to run arbitrary code. That's not factually incorrect, but don't panic. Don't need to set your hair on fire. Actually exploiting this bug is really difficult, and it's not practical in any way today. Maybe it might lead to a tethered jailbreak in the vague future. And of course, the cat is now out of the bag. So Apple are almost certainly going to issue a patch in the near future. So this is one of those academically interesting, important stories, but not something any of us should panic about, no matter what headlines you read telling you, auga, auga, every iPhone has a USB-C problem. It's like, yeah, but no.
Right. Okay.
Again, if you live in the United States, something that was promised to you in 2023 was a sort of a badge. So, you know, you have the Energy Star rating to tell you that your washing machine is not horribly inefficient.
Right.
There is now an equivalent called the Cyber Trust Mark, which is quite clever. So it's a little icon and a QR code. So instead of trying to fit lots and lots of data onto a label, all the vendor does is put a QR code on the label, and that QR code takes you to a web page managed by, I think it's NIST, and that will tell you how long the vendor is promising to give you software updates, or in giant big writing if they're not committed to any. And those kind of basic information. How do I set, does this thing have a default password? How do I change the default password? This kind of basic information is all in a standard format. And so if you apply for this little sticker, you have to answer a standard set of questions. Therefore, the QR code can take you to a page with a standard set of answers.
Right.
It's
So
a really nice
the
thing.
standard exists, whether may not see it in the wild yet.
It is now open. So vendors, as of last week, can submit their hardware. So it's ready.
Yeah. But we won't see it on packages for a little bit. I was just checking some packages I got this week, and they're not on there.
I guess around about, if you think about it, the time frame here is probably the same as the time frame for stuff you saw at CES. You've been told about it now, they're getting ready to ship it, and then in a few months' time, all of those products will start appearing on the shelf. So I'd say in the same sort of a time frame, you can start to see new routers or whatever with this little CyberTrust badge or icon. So it's a nice thing.
Yeah. I remember when you first told us about this, and we're thinking, hot diggity.
Yeah. And I retain that opinion. Hot diggity. This looks like it's well done. It looks nice. So, good. We also then have an executive order signed by soon-to-be former President Biden to bolster national security. Basically, it's really boring, mundane stuff. It's not actually a new order. It's an update to an order that's been around so long President Obama signed it. It is in no way controversial, so I don't think this is in any way likely to be rolled back. What it does is it makes it easier for US government agencies to sanction state-sponsored hackers who are attacking them. That can only be good.
Good.
Yes. Also on the good pile, because I think some people were cleaning out their desks, the Federal Trade Commission has given GoDaddy quite the royal slap on the wrist. They have been told that their practices were deceptive. They were telling people that they had security controls they absolutely did not have. They were not doing reasonable security. They were in fact hacked to pieces repeatedly. And they now have government mandated twice yearly security reviews, and they have to implement a whole big security program. So
good.
Straighten up and fly right. Yay. And then finally, India has come a step closer to joining the European Union and California in being one of the jurisdictions with good, broad data protection rules. In their case, it's the DPDP. So Digital Personal Data Protection. So as well as the GDPR and the, what's the California one called?
Got an S in it, some P's.
Loads of
the one you're
P's.
talking about.
Yeah,
the one that
loads of
makes us have to click the pop-up to say, stop tracking me, stop tracking me, stop tracking me.
Yes. Well, the Indians are joining, so now you can add DPDP to your list of rules stopping companies from abusing your data. It's actually pretty sensible. I had a look through the basic things. If you hold people's data, it's your job to secure it. You can't just wave your arms vaguely. You actually have to try secure it. Pretty good. And then we get to jump into top tips. So you may or may not have heard that there's been some stuff going on social media. So you might want to delete some of your accounts. So the folks over at Intego have a nice article saying how to delete your social media accounts: Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and more. Might be useful. I'll be honest, I don't advise you do this, because let me take that back. Unless your account is completely anonymous, so that it's in no way tied to you or a username you use everywhere, you don't want to give it up, because then someone could re-register with the same username and start impersonating you and do your reputation harm. So go to sleep. Stop posting, delete the app, but keep the account. Stop the squatters.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, just stop going there.
Yeah, I updated my X account to say this account is now dormant, and I put some Zs. You know the way you can have emoji after your display name? So it now has 3 Zs.
Did you give it your Mastodon account or your Blue Sky account?
There's a pinned post left to the top of my dormant account saying you can find me on Mastodon and what's the other one I'm on? Not Threads, because I don't want to go to Facebook. Blue Sky, thank you. Blue Sky. And I think in related news, because it is related, Mastodon have formally moved to set themselves up as a registered non-profit in such a way that all of the intellectual property has now been removed from the control of any single individual. So unlike WordPress, where Matt Mullenweg has ended up with the ability to cause all sorts of chaos in that community, Mastodon has proactively made it impossible for their founder to lose their mind and do something similar. So this, I think, is very good. Proactively, before there's a problem, a bit like the Linux Foundation, disconnected from the human, no matter how amazing that human is. Like Linus Torvalds can't destroy Linux because, again, it's been put into a foundation. And now that's true of Mastodon as well. So I think that's a good move.
Definitely.
Yes. I have one interesting insight. The folks at Intego, whose job is malware, right? They're a Mac-focused antivirus company. They have done a nice little roundup of the Mac and iPhone malware of 2024, and they projected forward. What do we think is most likely to be an issue in 2025? And they haven't gone out on a limb or anything. They basically went, this is about money. So whatever was making a profit, we're going to see more of that, which basically means Stealer malware, which ties right back to the Have I Been Pwned story. So it's a bit of, synchrony here. And they are also expecting to see more fraudulent apps in the various app stores, partly because of the European Union having third-party app stores, and just partly because attackers are being quite successful at overwhelming app review, both on the Google Play Store and in the Apple App Store. They're getting malicious apps in for days or even weeks sometimes before they get noticed and pulled down. And that's making them a profit. And if the baddies make a profit, more happens. So that's the expectation. So be careful.
I think it's a bit more useful to give us information like that than those year in review. Here's how everything was in the pooper.
It was kind of interesting because they did very bulleted. So their year in review was really easy to read. You could scroll and just read the headlines. And it was kind of nice to go, oh, I remember that. I talked to Alison about that. Oh, I remember that. Nostalgia might be too strong a word, but Anyway, we are ready for some palate cleansing. Alison, do you want to take the lead on the first one?
I do. Jonathan Wessler posted in our Slack one of the funniest, most awesome, nerdy things I've read in a long time. It's a site called EIEIO.games. And who is the author? I'm not sure who the author. Oh, no, Nolan Royalty. I want to read everything this person ever writes. The title of the article is One Crossword, Crosswords for Your Password Manager. And it is a real game that this guy has written in 650 lines of Python. And throughout this, he's got the most hilarious things. Like at the very beginning, he says, I made one crossword because the password manager game space has stagnated.
At 0.
And then he goes, so the basic idea of this is that you give this game access to your 1Password vault, and then it creates a crossword puzzle for you from your passwords. And then one of the lines in here is he says, for your password hint, I suggest that you include the name and URL of the website this is for. But it's also super nerdy. I mean, he's talking you through how he designed it and how creating a crossword puzzle game is difficult. Like dense ones are really hard, and how he wanted to make it fast enough and everything. So he's got all this nerdy stuff, and he says, having no dependencies was important to me. Some people seem to jealously guard their passwords. ? And I thought they'd feel more comfortable playing this game if they could easily read all of the code. I definitely recommend reading the whole thing, but the very last line is, I hope you enjoy one crossword. Please send your best passwords my way. It's just, there isn't any little bit of this that isn't the most wonderful thing ever. I just loved every minute of it.
It's a very fun way to draw attention to passwords. It's silly, it's nerdy. It's our stuff.
I tagged Dave Tier from 1Password in it when I posted on Mastodon. So funny. Oh, it's wonderful.
So I have one palette cleanser for you if you don't mind reading. So this is one of those long reads I have a habit of tagging. But you may or may not know James Thompson, because I now know him as the cool Scottish guy who's on Clockwise often. Yeah. He is more famous for writing pcalc, but it turns out he used to work for a certain company called Apple. Strangely enough, in their Cork office here in Ireland. And he's just released a blog post about what he was doing 25 years ago. Because 25 years ago was the birth of Mac OS X, as we had to call it then, and the birth of the dock. And it turns out that the very first dock in the preview version of Mac OS X was written by one
James Thompson.
James Thompson. But he did it while pretending to Steve Jobs that he'd moved to California, because Steve on a whim went, oh, the dock guy, he's important. He has to move here. And he was like, I have a wife and family. And he said to his manager, I can't move. And his manager said, don't worry, pretend you have, and we'll fly you over for every meeting with Steve. And so he spent a whole bunch of months jumping over and back across the Atlantic, pretending to live in California.
Wow. I love it. I love it. That's great.
Yes. It's
that
well
sounds
written.
worth reading.
Yes. I mean, he's so much fun when he's on podcasts. He writes as much fun. It was a fun read.
Do I remember correctly? He lives on a boat. There's somebody they have often who lives on a boat. I want to say it's him, but I could be wrong.
It's plausible because houseboats are a thing in the British Isles. Like the people who live on that island love living on boats on canals. It's a thing they do.
Okay.
And he is on that island now. He's left Ireland. He's back at home. So that's quite plausible.
Well, that's a couple of good palette cleansers. I can barely remember the horror that you just finished telling us about.
Yay. Right. Well, on that note then, I think it's probably time I tell everyone to do the most important thing, to stay patched so you stay secure.
Well, I promised you a mammoth show and I delivered. But that's going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeet.com anytime you like, just like John did, telling me about the voiceover problem with Buy Me a Coffee? Anyway, if you have a question or a suggestion, just send it on over. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. You can follow me on Mastodon. Where? podfeet.com/Mastodon. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can go to podfeet.com/YouTube. If you want to join in the conversation, you can join our Slack community over at podfeet.com/Slack, where you can talk to me and all the other lovely No Silicastaways. You can support the show at podfeet.com/Patreon or with a one-time donation at podfeet.com/donate with Apple Pay or any credit card, just like John. Or you can use podfeet.com/PayPal. If you want to join in the fun of this live show, head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic No Silicastaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed.